Take care.
So let me talk to two
Always
things.
remember
quick.
more than anything else, find your balance.
I want to say
Hey,
something
kind
quick.
of.
Because we talked about you talked about pushback with the vaccine passport thing, right? Just
Yeah.
because Trump lost, that's not real. Like that was happening anyway. I left last year across the country. I went from New Hampshire all the way to South Dakota, and South Dakota was getting the press because they hadn't shut down. And there were various degrees of who was wearing masks, what these measures were. I was in New York State, upstate New York, okay? But the lockdowns there were fucking ridiculous. Like had to move ridiculous. Now, the thing is, again, I'm not deifying Trump at all because he
No, I
certainly
don't
didn't
think you are.
protect us from Cuomo even before that. They had mandated vaccines. Basically, if you had the religious exemption waiver, which me and my sister fought for my nieces and got, no longer valid. To the day we left, we ended up leaving in October, and we weren't even in school. They wanted those kids to get shots. This is long before COVID 1984.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, you also had catch and release going on there. And then, when you have insurmountable proof, okay, under Trump, nothing is done with Cuomo. First of all, that's the spot for the smart cities. They gave that city during this whole thing, number one, to Bloomberg with the contact tracers. Number two, to Gates, not for what you would think, for education. Isn't that nice of him? And then everything else goes to Eric Schmidt. Okay? Now that you're right, that is in place. It's not going anywhere. These guys put it on paper. I'd encourage people to read The New Digital Age. It's like 8 years old now. So yeah, that's there. But Trump gets in, there's still going to be the kind of legislation because guys like Cuomo, unless you're putting him in prison, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen. You got all the evidence in the fucking world, right? Guy won a fucking Emmy, got $6 million fucking dollars to write a book he didn't write and kill a bunch of old people. And he still is with the vaccine and the mandates there. That goes on to this day. Now, I'm not saying
And just because I'm biased, but just because no one brings it up, Whitmer too.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about Whitmer. Whitmer
I
did
know.
the same fucking shit.
I only talk
spent
about
my summer
Cuomo.
in
She put
Michigan.
my
She's
friends
horrible.
in jail over that shit.
Yeah.
Over fucking
Yeah.
protesting the fucking nursing home shit.
Uh-huh.
I have friends that got put in jail over protesting that.
So
But fuck you too.
Yeah, it's like
she's
you literally
terrible.
have this nothing being done there. But I moved to Iowa because Trump or no Trump, we were going to fight back. I saw it. You know what I mean? The legislation locally, my sheriff had already made a dictate that he was not going to enforce mask mandates. At the time when I got here, in the area I went to, the kids weren't even going to be in masks in school. They hadn't been all the way through. So you kind of had to play the game and see where it was. Now, what I really don't like about what DeSantis did, and by the way, there are problems with even the executive orders that Kim Reynolds signed. And I'm gonna speak to the fact that you can make a difference in a second. DeSantis, for instance, should be prosecuting that person that wants to charge $1,000 for somebody that doesn't have a vaccine passport and $20 for a concert that does. Why? He says, well, if you pay the $1,000, you're treated like everybody else. Well, then it's not a fucking medical issue, is it? If it's basically a class issue and you can afford it, you can do whatever the fuck you want. That's the message you send. Now, when we get here, schools are a mess. The kids are back, but a lot of them are in mass if you're not in a private school, right, from different dictates. Now, I've been meeting with people. We've been challenging the school boards. Some of the councils were still meeting online. I think telepolitics is extremely dangerous for a multitude of reasons. But it was only 3 weeks ago. I was at one of these meetings, and I totally believe in organizing, right? It doesn't have to be just an event. You create your own events. You create your own groups. That's what I've been doing here. And these two women from a suburb of Des Moines, which is about an hour and a half away from me, are sitting there in tears, telling their stories of their daughters, how they got not only religious, but then medical exemptions for the mask. The one girl got staffed 4 fucking times. Like, these are like 6 and 7 year olds, right? So I end up putting that on the net. I interview them. After they go to the school board the next night, the school board fucking railroaded them. They put them off to the side so they couldn't even be seen on the live stream camera. They wouldn't let one of the mothers speak. You'd think it's all over, right? We can't do anything. Well, 2 days later, they're sitting next to the governor who banned them across the whole fucking state. And my girls weren't wearing masks the next day. The next day. So to say that we can't have an impact and that we're powerless and the only thing that's going to be is some kind of crazy force, that's a loser mentality in my opinion. No offense. Now, I'm not saying they haven't used force against us and that the Second Amendment isn't there and that these motherfuckers aren't treasonous, because I am. They are. All right? But first of all, another big solution is we all have these fucking magic boxes in our pocket that are high def. And there used to be a time and a thing called We Are Change and all these other groups. I remember Student Scholars for 9/11 Truth, or just anybody who was into it. You would confront politicians, any politician, right or left, anybody who was one of these pundits on TV, Charlie Rose amongst them, Robert Gibbs, who worked for Obama. You look back in history, and that's how you put them on the spot. And those things went viral or semi-viral then. It's a lot harder now. But instead of fucking being worried about somebody in a pussy hat you want to dunk on that's making the same amount of money as you are, right? Maybe we start doing that. And I'm sick of it that we can't target those people non-violently and put them on the spot because they're humans too, and we can. All right?
Hey, Jason, I just wanted to clarify that.
Sure.
I think you can still make a difference at your local level. Politically.
Sure.
I was, and I think Clint was also strictly speaking about the federal level. Like, that's just so far gone.
It's tough, man. But the first thing to do, right? Like, if we want legitimate voting, then county by county, we have to make it legitimate by banning all voting machines and instituting hand ballots for everything and hand counting. Listen, technology
that's fine. I'm just saying, like, everything that the federal government is doing, everything that the federal government is pushing, they're boiling the frog too fast. And I think you've even seen on some level state legislatures fight back by, they're gonna ban vaccine passports. Some of them are doing like defend the guard legislation, things like that. So that's an example of what's that?
Oh yeah, I mean you have
federal gun laws as well.
You have a county in California
by the federal government. That's what I'm talking about.
I get that level, man.
Like running against the Capitol building with an M1 Garand. I mean, like the state saying, no, fuck you. And then the county's also doing that, just bringing it back to the most localized level you can.
Well, I think that's the solution, right? But at some point, you have to be able to take back the federal government. And it's hard because, again, we're talking about when we talk about the deep state, first of all, I want to say that term was coined by a guy named Peter Dale Scott. He's in my film Invisible Empire. A lot of people don't talk about him. He was about as left as it gets. Guy out of McGill University, guy who actually took courses with Zbigniew Brzezinski back in the day. And he's still around. He's in his 90s. Very, very intelligent guy. But the thing is that deep state apparatus, everything post-World War II, and you could argue even before that, when you start having underground unaccountability, when you have these side projects in the Department of Energy and DARPA, et cetera, there is an agenda, right? And one of those agendas I keep talking about is how NASA has always been kind of a front for the military-industrial complex. And I just want to show you guys this document, and I encourage you to check it out, because you are right that it seems like no matter what, I think it's beyond federal, this agenda is steamrolled. So what you're looking at is a part of a PowerPoint presentation that a guy named Dennis Bushnell, who is now the chief scientist of NASA, okay? And if you're looking to the side of me right here, he was going around with this in July of 2001, is the earliest, this is pre-9/11, and telling people that the IT age would end in 2020 and that the bio-nano era would be 2020 to we don't know when, and then the virtual era, the transhumanist one, that would come eventually. Now, it is quite stunning that the bio-nano era officially began worldwide in 2020 when they used biological nanotechnology to inject people with our mRNA. That is 100% what that is. Now, other stunning things in this document is we talk about Tela, and this is a Future Warfare 2025 document, by the way. This is in conjunction, before we get there, with things like DARPA, the CIA, and Bushnell is kind of like a talking head for this, because he's been the lead of so many of these black ops. ONI, Office of Naval Intelligence, of course, see the FBI there. So you see the Tela thing, and how many of these things in our society do we already have? Telesocialization is the biggest thing in the world. Okay, commuting, shopping, entertainment, obviously everything's on the box. Travel, education, big push this year. Medicine, you don't need a doctor anymore. Commerce, politics. We let senators and congressmen phone it in from a fucking webcam. All right? So
for a year and a half.
And kick people out that they didn't want speaking. That's the big spooky thing about Tele. It's like, oh, you join your local government meeting and they don't like what you're saying. Oops, sorry, your Skype call dropped. Sorry, whoops.
So
no idea what happened there. Technical difficulties.
And not only that, I mean, we get into a lot of things like deep fakes and real time and the quality of that, and whether you could even have somebody impersonating another person, virtual politicians. I mean, that's a real thing to be concerned about. Now, this was about the war after next. Now, we've already had our little war on terror, and it seems that war on terror is being directed at us. Well, in this document, they talk about the continental United States, right, and the infrastructure within. And aside from inexpensive information, internet, and psychological warfare, which you can see behind me, and inexpensive binary biologicals into the food supply, they say inexpensive Trojan horse civilian systems. That is Google. That is Twitter. These are the Trojan horse civilian systems that let them do everything they want and be completely unaccountable. So you are right. At a federal level, man, we're pretty fucked. So what do we do about it? What do we do about it? Well, first of all, we got to start demanding mass declassifications. We have to start saying, you know what? There's not a class of people that's beyond the law. Because if we are going to have some kind of a reformation, revolution, whatever you want to call it, I'm not for Mussolining these people. I don't think they get a firing squad if they get convicted. I think that's too good for them. I think they get their utopian fucking dream. We build them a nice little supermax. They get to fucking go in there. There's a camera everywhere that anybody can log in and check it out. I can see Dick Cheney crying on the toilet while Prince Andrew cries for his mommy down the road, right? And if they get out of line, it's okay, because we've put the DARPA / Elon Musk Neuralink chip in, and we'll just release nice endorphins, so they'll love it there. We'll give them their utopian society. That's my fucking dream, bro. I get it. I fucking get it.
That's all. I'm changing it because mine was just to port them to the moon, but now that's even better. I love it.
It's the ultimate reality show, right? It's the ultimate reality show. And a lot of these people are guilty, man. But we also, you know, one of the biggest things that upsets me right now is the new narrative after a year plus isn't looking at this virus, whatever it is, as a biologically created in a lab possible seeded weapon or whatever, but it has to be a leak. And it has to be China, and now it's going to be China versus the U.S., and Mike Pompeo's good again, and let's listen to fucking Karl Rove, you know?
Right.
Like what is going on? Like, so we got big issues. We got bigger issues than just Mockingbird Media and talking heads. We got a whole underground infrastructure that now militarily has been set up against the people, and their weapons, man. Star Wars didn't fail. Space Force isn't going to the fucking moon with Elon Musk. In fact, there's a new fucking story today that just keeps legitimizing Musk as a front man. I mean, first of all, when he put up Starlink...
Is this about the anonymous thing that came out yesterday with the Bitcoin and the government subsidies? Because that's an interesting fucking angle, too.
Well, of course. Well, listen, you get into PayPal, Peter Thiel, the behind-the-scenes stuff. They're openly admitting that within an hour, Musk's Tesla rockets that are we're going to fucking Mars. Yeah, right. Can deliver Air Force cargo anywhere in the world in an hour. Yeah. It's the militarization of space. Starlink went up with DARPA's Starlink for the Army. You know, that guy is not anything but a front man for the technology. Again, let's look at this document. So...
Also, the SpaceX rocket program is the most elaborate hooker disposal method network in existence.
All I'm saying is right here.
Why do you think they all blow up, Jason? What do you know there's a dead whore in that thing.
Oh my God.
You know there is.
Way to make it light, Steve. I love you. So here you talk about the production and procurements of these things. It takes about 15 years for technology. They put these things in there sometimes 40 plus years in their inventory, right? So you look at Elon Musk's Neuralink, all that stuff. They were doing brain chips. In fact, Dennis Bushnell, the gentleman who did this, I have him in a 2010 speech, I believe, 11 years ago, saying how they had already fitted, 10,000 human beings with human brain interface chips. 10,000 a decade ago. 10K. Okay? So now they're going to commercialize it. They've been using it for military for a very long time. Again, this transcends just a nation state or federal government. They put it on paper. And again, most people think NASA's going to the moon or fucking rockets. No, they're very much involved in the climate change agenda, pushing carbon trading, giving the science for that. And I got Bushnell, same guy with the rolled with this, talking about instituting population control in that same speech. I would encourage anybody to check it out on YouTube. If it's still there, but it's definitely on Rockfin. God bless
Still
them.
there. Yeah.
Let me say, all of this is extremely black pilling, but let me throw the white pill that is also a black pill from the Austrian econ side of things. None of this is going to come to fruition because the fucking entire global empire is going to collapse because the dollar is going to die. So I am not so concerned with getting election integrity because first and foremost, I don't believe in democracy and I don't believe that people vote for the fucking person who's going to save us. So I think that's pointless to be concerned with this stuff. I also think it's pointless to think that they're going to be able to see all these plans to completion because ultimately they are burning their only resource to do it, which is the dollar. So I think that we don't need to worry about the federal government collapsing because it's going to do it on its own because it's ran by idiots that don't understand anything.
So let me contest that a lot. I think that this implosion has been talked about and discussed, and not only war game, but put in place in more than a beta form. We have to realize there are 1.2 fucking billion Chinese motherfuckers over there, and they got almost every one of them now, as they announced 2+ years ago they were going to try to do on the social credit system in some way, shape, or form. They want digital currency, brother. They want it all on your phone. They want to be able to do the same thing they're doing in China. That was a beta test. The only way China does all that stuff is the Rockefeller Foundation, Kissinger, Nixon back in the 70s setting up the infrastructure. When we talk about somebody like Eric Schmidt, who again, head of Google back in the day, he had to step down a few years ago, but was part of the National Security Council, also the guy in charge of Dragonfly, the censored internet in China. So really, they don't want the dollar. Fuck the dollar, man. They want the resources. What did the dollar buy? They want you to own nothing. I mean, that's what this is all about. We talk about that, and they've had a carbon trading market. The social credit score and what they're now talking about, stakeholder capitalism, is a morality score. Now, a morality score that they will never be judged by because they own everything. But, like I said, like he was saying, you could show people this. I mean, Time Magazine has a whole thing that starts with the Great Reset and the COVID-19 pandemic as its, thing. And you can go through, I mean, you got Prince Charles in here calling for a Marshall Plan on climate, all sorts of talking heads, both in media and government and, of course, royalty, which again should show you how corrupt systems are. The fact that we have rule by bloodline, not just European, but Saudi Arabian, in 2021, should show you how far civilization has come, brother.
The idea that nation states exist to battle against each other for supremacy of the globe is something that the predator class in general has considered quaint now for 20-some years. Mm-hmm. And Reed has spoken about this accelerationism. I agree 100%. I think the last 6 years have been a tremendous period of accelerationism. And I agree that the only people that think Joe Biden is doing a decent job are the people who are getting paid to say that Joe Biden is doing a decent job. Nobody else. The disillusionment exists in so many different spaces. Now, what Jason's talking about in terms of the Great Reset, they're counting on that disillusionment. They're counting on that, what I call manufactured confusion, which is the primary role of the media since consent has been manufactured about 20 years ago.
Aren't you going to write a book about that, Steve? Every time you say it, I'm gonna keep bothering you about it because
when I get a personal assistant, and after I move and get the fucking cabins built, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But my point being, is that this presents an opportunity for the predator class who is united in a way that I have not seen them before, and I've been around for a little bit more than 40 years and paying attention for at least 25 of those to what's going on with this. Have never seen the predator class globally united in a way that they are. And I know that Congress and the White House and politics is the government we get to see. That's what we're allowed to see and what we're allowed to participate in, making it the most successful limited hangout in history. But what I think that like our responsibility in the independent media spaces, and Jason, dude, I'd give this guy all the credit in the world for doing exactly this and doing it consistently, no matter what the political ideology of the person is to make the people who don't want to be household names. That's what we need to be fucking doing, and that is where we're going to get the momentum to do all of the things, is by correctly identifying the problem and applying a solution that allows for us to go after the people who are actually fucking responsible, as opposed to the people who are put in front of us to take the punches and then just get replaced by another Muppet.
Yeah, and that's like to that point too of yeah, they do want the collapse. Like the powers that be are counting on it and they're planning around it. And that's why I always bring up when people ask me of like, are you promoting a collapse? Do you want a collapse? Are you a crazy accelerationist? It's like, no, that's already happening. The thing is hitting that golden hour where everything's gone to hell and making it go our direction, not their direction, because they want to come out of the rubble with everything. That's their plan, and they're building around coming out of the rubble with everything. So we need to get both ready, like informed and prepared enough to take that in hopefully a positive direction instead of some crazy fucking cyberspace technocrat nightmare that they want out of it. You know,
I agree that they want the collapse to some extent, but I think it's a mistake to say fuck the dollar, given that they have fought tooth and nail and murdered millions of people across the globe to maintain the dollar's hegemony. So yeah. I don't necessarily buy that they have a smooth transition plan from the dollar as it dies, and I think that's our opportunity. That's our window. If we're going to have an opportunity to fight back and prevent a dystopic nightmare that we all see coming, that's our moment. And if we aren't prepared, this is the reason for my show, Liberty Lockdown, is to try and arm my audience with financial resources so that they can be able to withstand the inevitable collapse when the dollar does die. Because at this point, with us printing trillions, our debt will probably be approaching 40 trillion nationally by the end of Biden's presidency. The day is coming. I mean, it is very imminent, and I think that we are in the early stages of what will eventually be looked back on as a hyperinflationary blowout.
And I want to get into a little bit broader conversation about counter economics. We're on
Steve.
We're on with Aftermath and iHeart for about 37 more minutes. I don't care how long we go. I was kind of thinking about opening the phone lines for the last like 15 minutes of the radio show. But while at least some of you are here, what I'm trying to figure out is if the modern LP, LP National, is it really just objectivists and anarchists? Like, or is it really just the Randian libertarians and then a whole bunch of different flavors of anarchists? Like, is that the philosophical direction of the party?
Yeah, that's what I want to know about.
I know personally a number of libertarians who are also, I am an anarcho, blah, 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 blah. Like how many syllables and hyphens you need to label yourself so that people know exactly how much you're worth. And I know a bunch of libertarians that are of the more like traditional Randian sort of like, I don't know, objectivist or objectivism as a guiding principle for their libertarianism. And I haven't necessarily run into an in-between.
Well, what would be an in-between?
Between an objectivist and
I mean, I think there's most people are in between there, because it's like that's the gradient by which you kind of evolve into libertarianism. Normally you end up as a minarchist and then you evolve to an anarchist. Sounds kind of hoity-toity. I don't want to come off like that, but it's true. It's true. Usually you start off as a minarchist and then eventually you come to the conclusion that reform is impossible and you become an anarchist. That's the arc that I normally see.
Jason.
I want to know. I'm curious. Is there like a split in the libertarian part? I mean, a lot of people call me libertarian,
there's
which
like
is funny, but there is a split, yeah. Because I know there's obviously the Democrats, Republicans. So in the libertarians, I'm curious about the split there.
No, there's the whole because obviously like I represent the Unity Coalition, which is like what's going on here. But there's also Liberty Unity, which is like a separate kind of thing, and it is because there's three distinct kind of branches in the LP. You do have the Randians that are more of the Republican strategy, more of like Ron Paul people.
Yeah.
And then you have people like everyone on here, like me, Reed, and everybody that are like explicit anarchists. And we're like, well, we can use the LP, but like it's not our end goal. And then you have more of like the Vermin Supreme wing that's more left leaning, more stuff like that. And they're doing their own thing. And we all fight like cats and dogs. And the whole point is to try to get us to stop fighting like fucking cats and dogs. Because it's ridiculous and preposterous sometimes, but there definitely is like a hard like 3 triangle split in what the LP stands for.
Yeah, Liberty Unity is not a podcasting ring built like the Epstein circle to protect each other. I don't know where that narrative's come out of nowhere.
That's the conspiracy that came out the last 2 days.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with podcasting. Yeah, it was just the idea of focusing on the big picture issues and trying to unite behind those. And especially if you have cultural differences, who cares as long as you don't want the government dictating how you run your life. But yeah, I mean, libertarianism is the broadest tent as far as your philosophy goes. As long as you don't want the government dictating how people live, then as long as you're not going to force your will on other people or, damage other people's property, then you can live however you want. So
I mean, like you got Clinton and Cap. I'm a mutualist, so I'm way more left than that. And then you have people in the LP that are straight up like anarcho-syndicalists and shit. And yet we're all like the same party. It's weird. It's a beautiful clusterfuck.
I think the only meaningful divide that exists in the LP, in my opinion, is the blue pilled versus the red pilled. And I know people don't like that description, but it's applicable, so I'm going to use it. The people that are still within the LP, that were the establishment figures that believe that reform was possible. If we just get on the debate stage, we'll have a president. It'll save everything. Like those people are the ones that we're trying to basically not push out, but allow them to just expire.
Expire is a good word.
And I think that's the progress that we're making with Dave Smith and the Mises Caucus, which is what we're all about at this point, is that we're trying to get people in that see the problem the same way we do, see the severity of it the same way we do, and proceed accordingly with the level of urgency that demands. And anybody that's in the LP that's been there for 40 years, that has watched this dystopia fucking seep around us and amongst us, and is still sticking to like, oh, if only we had a platform in which we could just allow people to hear our ideas, then everything would be saved. No, it's too late for that. I'm sorry. We need to do much more drastic maneuvering if we have any hope at all.
So it's funny. Is Dave actually running for president?
It is strongly rumored.
Because that's a guy who I would actually really like to talk to. But I won't if he's an active candidate. I won't have active candidates on the show ever again. Ever. I don't.
He's not.
Well, that's it, because that's what
Chad Wilson.
That's what cracked me up, Steve, is because when we were all in Washington D.C. and I was hearing you guys talk about like what happened both in like the Green Party and the People's Party. And then me knowing everything that goes on in the LP, I'm like, oh my god, all the third parties are the same.
Yeah, that's
totally. Drama and stupid shit. I'm like, oh my god, the Greens are just like the LP. The People's Party was just like the Greens.
Primary worse than the Democrats did. More thoroughly and more brutally, the Green Party rigged their primary worse than the fucking DNC.
It's like, holy fuck.
I never expected Green Party to be like that either, because I never really paid attention to the Green Party, and I found out all this stuff happened. I was like, oh, okay.
An actual bag of mayonnaise. That's who you rigged your party for.
Yeah. There's this continuous splitting in all these parties. Like that's just the pattern I'm seeing. It's just more people drawing the line between reform versus like, hey, this isn't going to work anymore. So that's
we're actually growing though right now. We are.
Awesome.
100%. I believe it. I do. The cycle that I saw coming out of the Reagan era at George Bush, when Clinton first got elected, and there started to be a push for, oh, holy fuck, Bill Clinton is Ronald Reagan with a drawl, you know, which
he plays the guitar, Steve.
became evident pretty quickly, especially because the Crime Prevention Act was 1994. The Omnibus Counterterrorism, which is the free runner to the Patriot Act, written and discussed in 95. NAFTA, all of these things were happening in and as Clinton's second term was beginning. That's when you saw Nader run for the first time, I guess, again, you know, as a resurgent candidate. And the re-emergence of the Green Party as kind of an opposition factor, to the point to where they're still blamed for the 2000 victory of George W. Bush. So, and this is also when all conspiracy was labeled left-wing pinko nonsense. Bunch of anti-American communists who were secretly working for the Kremlin to destabilize good Christian America. Now, the Green Party sort of fell out of favor in 2000, took another 16 years before it got blamed for anything, but Ron Paul and the Libertarian Revolution along the way started taking some of that blame, started getting some of that impetus. There was more of a resurgence of people of a libertarian mindset coming out of that 2008 Barack Obama victory. And what else did we see was a switch in the narrative of all conspiracy now being a right-wing, alt-right, secret Nazi psyop where everyone is actually on the payroll of the Kremlin working to destabilize good Christian America.
And I know you could definitely speak to this, Jason, and I could add a personal anecdote to you of, I remember showing one of your documentaries to somebody, I think like it was like 2012, something like that. And again, that person was like, this is some commie nonsense. and then I let people know that I was going to be talking to you today, and they're like, you mean the right-wing conspiracy theorists? And I'm like, it was the same
The
documentary.
9/11 truther guy.
It's the same documentary, and it's surreal. And I know Steve can speak to this, and I've speak to this of I've run out of labels to be called, and I've been doing the same thing for 10 years, and people just will take the same shit I was doing that used to make me like an Al-Qaeda sympathizer or a fucking like a pinko commie infiltrator, and now I'm a right-wing infiltrator to left-wing spaces.
Let me give Jason some credit here real quick. In 2005, I had my first panic attack of all time after watching Loose Change. So thank you so much for that, Jason. I've had an anxiety disorder ever since. You're a hero.
Hey guys, I gotta run, but thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
Good to see
Check
you, Reed.
out my show
care,
is
yeah.
Naturalist Capitalist on YouTube and at Reed Coverdale on Twitter. So thanks, guys.
Oh, no, nice meeting you.
Reed.
Nice.
Please come back.
Yes, sir. So
I took work off today. I'm going to be hanging out here until you kick me. So
so let me speak to like the label thing, because you're absolutely right. Like, because when I, for instance, when I was on Elwood's show, right, I mentioned kind of like my origin story, and that I was the first guy that Alex Jones had ever gave a show to back in the day. I was his sit-in host, and he gave me the show, The Info Warrior, and you could see his eyebrows come up, and I go, but you got to understand that when I was coming in and I met Alex in 2006, the Bush regime was in there. I was talking about Dick Cheney and Karl Rove and Paul Wolfowitz and Donald Rumsfeld. And then all of a sudden, okay, wait a minute. No, I didn't like the Bush administration either. You know, they kind of have that moment. And even with Callan yesterday, we began to talk about the Israeli role in 9/11 that I have a chapter in. We opened up with the Pakistani role. And, you know, we'd gone about an hour and a half, and he goes, yeah, but, you know, at what point do we kind of get into maybe this being about bigotry or racial or the Jews? And I go, look, man, I go, if I can't name out a nation state and their either their three-letter agency or their, you know, spy agency for corruption that is not only apparent but provable, what can I do? And I go, on the flip side of that, in Loose Change, The only Israeli part I think that we put in is that the Israeli government had warned about hijackings in America by I think 2 to 4 weeks earlier, and we got a lot of flack for that, for not putting the Mossad stuff in. Now, I made a follow-up in 2008 called Fabled Enemies, where it gets a large role. It's like 20 minutes. So damned if you do, damned if you don't. I've been called, an undercover crypto Jew and a Mossad agent. I've been called an anti-Semite and a Nazi. So
Crypto Jew?
Dude,
That's a new one.
there was it's a new video.
Update name in context,
dude.
Bro, can we just talk like for half a second about how putting crypto in front of everything has gotten out of fucking control?
Yeah,
like
no,
literally everything. You crypto
Fucking
libertarian.
crypto fash Magnus.
Crypto libertarian, crypto Jew though. That takes.
Well, let me speak to again these fantasies on message boards too, and kind of like whatever's new was old then, right?
Yeah.
So one of the big things for me that I knew there weren't going to be superheroes. There was a guy named Tom Flacco at the time. He was covering 9/11 really well, but then when Scooter Libby got indicted, this was his opportunity to go for the grift and say that there were all these secret indictments and that they were going to bring down Dick Cheney, and this was just the precursor to the real 9/11 investigation, right?
I remember that.
Yes. And then all of a sudden, like when I was doing these shows, you'd have people calling in about Nassara and white hats then. And this infrastructure had kind of been built underground in a lot of the quote-unquote conspiracy community. Now, there was even a guy named Benjamin Fulford who had written for Forbes magazine quite frequently and kind of flipped over and started talking truth. And then all of a sudden he hooks up with David, I'm on Ancient Aliens all the fucking time, Wilcock, and he flips like his legitimate, journalistic base to the Yakuza is fighting the fucking Asian Illuminati. And he's got the insider info. And like those guys have run all sorts of grifts over the years, right? So it's tough because, even back in the day when I was talking 9/11, you'd have someone like Morgan Reynolds come out who had a legitimate position within government, was talking about real issues, and then all of a sudden, no planes hit the building, you know what I mean? And you'd be like, holy fuck, where are we going with this? So, that was one of the big things I wanted to do with Callan yesterday, is not even get into any of the physical anomalies or how I think it. He eventually asked me how I think it happened. And when I say something, I can see that he's like, oh, I can't believe that part of it. Of course, I didn't get to present my evidence.
You don't have to.
But exactly.
Nobody's asking you to believe what I'm saying. I'm asking you to go think about it. Look
and
for
that's
yourself.
why, if you look at what like my career was with that, and I wouldn't say it's over because I look at it, all of our foreign and domestic policy at that time at least outwardly, was based on that event, and it allowed for this infrastructure to be built. But I was never the guy. First of all, truther never existed. That came after we had the 9/11 truth movement. Okay, they wanted truther to be conspiracy theorist, and they wanted truther to be flat earth and fucking space is fake and everything else and all these other nonsense things. Now, on top of that, my shirts always just said one thing: investigate 9/11. Just have a real fucking investigation. I wasn't trying to tell you what to believe. I wasn't saying 9/11 was an inside job. That was a mantra that obviously InfoWars and Jones roll with, and I get it. When you want people out in the street, you want that mantra. But I like investigate 9/11. So somebody goes, what's their investigate? Well, I'm glad you asked. Not that outward. It was a fucking inside job. Oh, you think Bush knocked down the towers? I thought Bush had trouble tying his shoelaces. Okay? Like I didn't think he planned or plotted anything. Opening up even with Callan yesterday, I go, just want you to know, I'm not coming at you and saying this was an inside job. I believe that this is an international intelligence operation with role players in Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Israel, and within our own government, more than likely the COG program, which is the continuity of government program, which is when we started really talking about the shadow government being in existence. And one of the things in Fabled Enemies I put, it was like a small little article. I'd actually gone through paper news articles, guys, from New York. Yeah, I know, New York Daily News, that my buddy had an archive, and I ended up clipping a lot of them and put them in Fabled Enemies. And in this particular one, it was Bush at a dinner party talking about how Dick Cheney was like basically going around from underground bunker to underground bunker for a couple weeks after 9/11, running the government through the COG. Yeah. So,
Which was reported on at the time.
again,
don't believe your lying eyes, Steve.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 20 years
This
ago.
is why I'm going to start the Memory Hole podcast, and I'm actually looking for somebody that has a little bit bigger audience than me to co-host it with, because it's such a good fucking idea.
Yeah, so much shit has just disappeared into the ether. And we just don't fucking talk about it anymore. Like,
just start from the 90s, or start from the Kennedy assassination and go through the stories that have been intentionally buried so that we forget about it, so that we don't remember shit like Dick Cheney was running the fucking government from an underground bunker for 2 weeks because of the continuity of government protocols that have been established. We have got to forget, Jason, gentlemen, ladies, the Project for a New American Century and the authors of that document has largely rolled out the way that it was suggested, that the people who are behind preparing that document are still in prominent roles of very, very influential and unelected positions of government.
It's even the memory hole is even more severe than that. I can post stuff from last summer, like the skate parks getting filled in with sand in California, and that shit'll go viral because everyone's like, "Oh my god, I remember that." But there's been so much fucking dystopian nightmare that like stuff from 9 months ago has already been memory holed. It's incredible.
Yeah, and then like you're getting flashbacks to 9/11 because what was it? Just a couple days ago, everyone was making a big fuss over there being like hundreds of thousands of hours of security footage inside DC on January 6th that they won't release.
Yeah,
and then like they had to admit to that, so then they put the grift on. Like, oh, they don't want to release it because it'll indict Trump and they're protecting the white supremacists. Like, no, these motherfuckers don't want to release it because there'll probably be a lot of awkward shit that they will not be able to explain away.
I mean,
so that's 9/11 all over again. That's
some of the reporters in there that were able to just show that the cops were standing aside, or they were saying like they were actually having full-on conversations explaining, hey, as long as you guys do XYZ, we're fine here.
Yeah.
Like that stuff is what they cannot allow to be seen, because you can't call it an insurrection if the cops are advising them on how to behave and the guys are doing exactly what they're told.
If you go,
even with
on
the footage
Google,
you have, it's like, oh, do you guys think that you could maybe make your way out of the Senate building
It's just a
in
fucking
a few
cartoon
minutes?
watching it all go down, like on C-SPAN, or even just the way it was filmed, all of it. I was like, what's
It's like also
wasn't
wasn't some dude tweeting about how he was like he had Pelosi's laptop right with him, and like we never got any kind of follow up on it.
Oh no, they got him.
Actually, there was a follow up. That guy died.
Yeah,
that guy's dead.
That guy's buried under Gitmo.
He committed suicide apparently a couple weeks after saying he had gotten hold of Nancy Pelosi's. Yeah.
Did he commit suicide with 2 shots to the back of his head?
Yeah. He shot himself in the back of the head 4 times, threw himself off of a building, and burned his corpse in a suicide. Yes. And that was I got a lot of flack because that was like I started talking about that immediately after I went viral, and I went on a lot of more traditional like Democrat podcasts and stuff like that, and I brought that up of like the worst part about January 6th is that nobody was grabbing hard drives and posting that shit to the internet, because oh my god, you know
you're there,
and people and they get mad like, you really wanted them to do that? You wanted I'm like, yes.
And you wonder why Julian Assange is a political prisoner. It's exactly because of that, because he was that outlet that allowed for people to drop really hot information and allow the people to know about it.
And if you're gonna do that, for the love of God, don't fucking post it on Twitter, guys.
Right.
OPSEC. Come on.
That's what I was gonna say. That's what I was gonna say is if you go on Google and you try to look up the pictures, there's hundreds of them of people posing with police in DC.
Yeah.
A lot of those Twitters, Facebooks, Parler account, all those vaporized from the internet. You can find them if you dig for it hard enough, but a normie, you have to look to find all those pictures.
I go back to
this. Fucking cops.
I go back to this. We were in DC. I got there New Year's Day. That's when I landed, and we had Assange events, the 3rd and 4th. Where's that echo coming from?
The world will never know.
Gnarly.
I don't hear nothing.
Maybe it's me. We had Assange events the 3rd and the 4th. We were force the vote events that were before our events, like the same time, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. they were at the Rayburn office building in the park right next to the Rayburn office building. If you don't know what I'm talking about, here's the Capitol. Here's the Rayburn office building.
Is that the same one AOC bravely hid in? Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
which is why they were there for the force the vote thing.
Bravely.
Because that's where her office were. That's where the congressional office buildings are. My point to that is it's the same cops. It's the DC police. They're the Capitol Police. Pardon me. That's their jurisdiction. They were with us the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th at the Rayburn building and in the park where there were maybe 40 or 45 protesters. But I'll tell you what, there were 80 to 90 cops in a fucking horseshoe around us, blocking off any way to exit in case anyone got out of line, and they were ready to fucking swarm in 2 to 1 and stomp the shit out of us at any fucking minute. Not 48 hours later. I am across the street at the Capitol to a very different scene where the cops, after, a little show of state violence, more or less said, okay, look, as long as you stay between the velvet ropes, I guess we're cool.
Yeah, that's why I bring up like the Ashley Babbitt video is probably one of the most surreal like fucking videos up there, up with like some UFO and fucking tapes and shit. I've watched that 100 times. I cannot figure out what the hell is going on in that video, because every single step of it is like, wait, what? So like, there's this crowd of people and everybody's hanging out, but someone broke the glass, and then Ashley Babbitt crawls through it. She gets shot, and then a TAC team comes out of frame to the right, down the stairs, less than 3 feet. Like, what the hell is going on?
Fuck, right. I hated watching it so many times, but me too, because I was like, what the fuck is happening here?
Because like I know almost every single one of us here. I don't know if you've been, Clint. We've been in riots and like protests and stuff. We know how this generally kind of flows and how this happens.
Like
that doesn't make any fucking sense to me.
No.
Watching that, I was like, what the hell?
Right.
Because usually you don't see breaks in lines. You do not see cops intermingling in the protesters. They're on one side and then the other side, and the only time the cops are in the protesters is when everybody's getting the shit beat out of them, going to jail.
Yeah, or
like,
when they're doing that initial rush to advance the line.
Yeah,
so it's like how are they all intermingled?
That's what made that so extraordinary, is because there are law enforcement of some caliber or military that are steps behind her. You don't normally fire if you have your guys on the other side of that line. So all the way around.
That's the third rule of firearms. Know what's behind your target. And this guy just like while there's a TAC team like 3 feet behind her down the stairs, and this guy put rounds to the window. Like, in fairness
though, her head is through that window and he is point blank on her neck. So I don't know. I mean, it to me, there's a lot of theories about it being fake. I think it's legitimate. I think that it happened. That's my personal opinion. I just think it's totally bizarre that you have military or law enforcement that's in the crowd, and yet like they're steps away. They could have the other
grabbed
thing,
her by the backpack, pulled her out.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing that drives me most crazy, is that you have all these people that are protesting police brutality over the past year, and then you have an unarmed woman who shot point blank in the neck. And if you talk about it, you are immediately labeled a racist.
Yeah.
Which is fucking insane to
Some
me.
people should be fucking ashamed of themselves. Nothing about her. Nothing.
We get all sorts of shit for it because we have the Boogaloo flag that has everyone's names on it. It has like fucking Trayvon Martin on it. It has fucking like all, everybody. It doesn't matter race. Fucking Daniel Shaver. Like all these people are on it. And at the very bottom, the most recent name is Ashley Babbitt. And they're like, see, proof that they're white supremacists.
Yeah. And fucking call me white supremacist for feeling, for fucking caring that a human being died. She died.
Yeah, that's a victim of
like, let alone
violence.
State or not, she fucking died.
And I don't know who it was, and these people could easily be fucking fed plants. I wouldn't be surprised me. But that very small group of anti-fascists that were like in California, whatever, that were holding the sign saying Ashley Babbitt deserved it. Like, again, those very well could be fucking cops. I wouldn't be surprised. But like, holy shit, dude. Like, really? Like, really?
But you see that online all day, every day. I mean, there are millions of people that have been convinced that she was a dangerous whatever.
I talked to somebody that said, oh, well, they had to take a couple losses, think about all the people that have been killed by cops. I'm like, you go fuck yourself. That's that's a human being, whatever it could have been. Like,
No, yeah, fuck off with that. And it's crazy to me too. Of like, they started acting like the Trumpers did on George Floyd, where they started going into her background and looking for like she posted this one meme thing. She has this criminal charge, blah blah blah. I'm like, you motherfuckers are perfect for each other.
Yeah, no, that's the tribal nature of this divide. Is like, if you get caught up in that, where you start to go down like the path of, well, what was their moral character? Were they a great person throughout their life? Because that'll justify the police stomping the life out of them or fucking point blank gunning them down. No, that's not how it works. We don't give a fuck about their background. The cops were terrible in that moment, and we should fucking hold them to account. I don't think we even know the guy who shot her still, do we?
No,
they've kept it buried. They refuse to bring it up.
No, incredible. And it's not like they don't. It's not like they can't run a forensic analysis on the bullet. It's not like they don't already have that data.
It's not like the guy that didn't have to fucking file a report. Of course they fucking know. I mean, I would say this. That whole situation, to try to even call it an insurrection, again, when Babbitt's the only one that dies and the leader is a 36-year-old man in animal skins who lives with his mother in her basement and is taking selfies at the podium and stopped people from stealing muffins, by the way. The fucking Muffin Man is the leader of that insurrection. He's not armed. Yeah. Nobody's armed. There is no violence. Nobody dies. They try to bring up a cop and they're bringing out his family, by the way, recently, if you haven't seen that, who had a heart attack 4 days later and died. That's insanity. I've never seen any quote-unquote government insurrection that ended in zero violence against that very government that was getting insurrected against.
Again, me and Clint talked about this, and obviously everyone else can preach this. As people that have both been on the other side of right-wing violence, as like we've experienced it, and for people that hang out with right-wingers, if they wanted to go, that's not what it would have looked like. And we all know that's not what it would have fucking looked like. Period. Yes. Okay? Like if the people I run around with wanted to do something like that, it wouldn't have looked that way. Sorry. Like, it's ridiculous.
In the LA Stop the Steal rally that took place on the 6th, I'd almost say that was like more violent in scale, like in proportion to to what happened in DC, because like the assholes in LA were literally beating up bystanders, and like I'm still salty about that because I tried to grab an interview with Judy Mikovits, but I couldn't because they started beating the shit out of innocent bystanders, so I had to run over and try to see what the fuck was going on there. So like, that's what they would do if they wanted to.
Well, there was a dozen riots over the past year that were more violent than January 6th. So, and only one of them was labeled a terrorist organization away.
Yeah. Fucking just in Lansing, Michigan, we had what we call the porta potty incident, where a bunch of anti-fascists and Trump supporters got into fistfights over porta potties, because that's where we're fucking at now as a country. And a woman broke her fucking collarbone. Someone went to the hospital. A cop got fucking seriously injured. And it's like a fight over porta potties was more violent and dangerous to people than the goddamn January 6th. Like, what do you mean?
Right? Forget about Michigan. Y'all get crazy.
No, yeah, Michigan's wild, and nobody wants to talk about us.
I know.
Because I feel like Michigan and Louisville are the same, because the two places in the country that have been the most active politically and yet not talked about are Michigan and Louisville. Yeah. And that's because there was a whole lot of Trump supporters and anti-fascist people sitting down and talking, especially in Louisville. Louisville, you have 3%ers, the NFAC, us, and local BLM marching together like every day. Nobody talks about it. They were throwing flashbangs out of helicopters on fucking activists in Louisville. Nobody talks about it because there was more unity there. There was more stuff going on. It was post-political. They don't want that. They want to show you a Proud Boy punching an anti-fascist for 332 hours fucking straight instead of people sitting down and talking.
Because it does happen.
And I'm not the biggest fan of the Proud Boys in the world. One of them pulled a fucking gun on me. But I bring up all the time that I think it was in Montana where the local BLM chapter and the local Proud Boys sat down and had a joint rally against the drug war. Nobody talked about that. Nobody talked about that. It's like, holy shit, dude, because they don't want you to see that. They want you to see the stupid shit constantly.
Right? Yeah. No. It's like, yes, I'm not a fan of the Proud Feds. I don't like, but but we know that they're there. We know that there's white supremacists around. Like,
Yeah, they exist.
At some point, there's an over reporting on both sides of this. Like, there's over reporting on the right to make Antifa seem bigger than it is, and there's over reporting on the left to make the Proud Boys seem bigger than it is. When, you know, in the reality is both of them are just groups of people that are heavily infiltrated, and that even though they may be genuine, they often end up serving a narrative that helps advance a more sinister agenda than the one that they claim they're fighting for.
And it's the idea of the unity that they don't want out there either. It's just the idea of it, like that those people could possibly find something in common to talk about. It's unacceptable to the people that, you know, don't want to.
I don't know if Rome's going to jump on, but I'll steal one of his quotes from a video he posted about doing the event with me, which, by the way, they hid in the bushes and recorded us peeing. That was cool. But yeah, me and Rome did a joint homeless outreach, and he got so much shit for it. And he made a great point. He's like, if I was sitting here on Twitter sucking Joe Biden's dick or complaining about Republicans or something, none of you would fucking care. None of you would care. But I got some right wingers together and fed the homeless, and it's fucking wall to wall complaining. It's like, what's your fucking agenda here, bro? Like,
I just wanted to say too that the same way the Boogaloo movement is dragged down or you know, pilloried with these accusations of white supremacy, it's very similar with the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys have many minority participants in their group that doesn't scream white supremacist to me personally. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some in there. I'm sure there are. But I don't know any Antifa people, but I would imagine that they're not all, you know, hardcore communists. I would imagine some of them also are just interested in ending police brutality and things like that. So I don't know. I just this is why I like having these conversations where I get to actually meet people that have these labels that are put on them.
Like I got it.
99% of the time, I find that we have way more in common than we don't.